much everywhere in forensic DNA analysis, right?
That's correct.
Goes back to 1996, does it not, when the National NRC recommended a policy that samples be split wherever possible at the front end of the analysis to allow for independent examination.
Where possible, yes, that's correct.
Right, and they did that because it was their conclusion, was it not, that a wrongfully accused person's best insurance against a possibility of being falsely incriminated is the opportunity to have the testing repeated. Such an opportunity should be provided whenever feasible.
Correct.
Okay, could you now go back to Exhibit 30, page 8? Were certain DNA samples consumed in your analysis?
Yes, they were.
And for the record, are those listed on page 8 of your report?
Yes, they are.
Which samples were entirely consumed in your analysis?
That would be exhibits 1.4, 1.6, 1.9, 1.10, 1.12, 2.1, 3.1, 4.1, and 5.1.
Okay. Then are there a number of samples listed above there in the report where you say the DNA extracts will be retained? And then you list 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, 1.5, 1.7, 1.8, 1.13, 7.1, and 8.1.
Correct.
Does that mean that those are all swab samples, correct?
They were swabs, yes.
All right. Does your report mean that you consume the swabs, but you have some liquid extract remaining as to those samples?
Correct.
Now, are all of the samples, let's talk about the samples in Plaintiff's Exhibit 30. Were all of the samples you looked at there mixed samples?
I refer to my tables in my report.
Sure. Go to page 2, please.
And can we go to page 3 and 4?
3 and 4, please.
With the exception of the known samples from the known individual, that was a single source sample, but otherwise the evidence samples were all mixtures.
And in many cases, they were mixtures of sometimes 4 and 5 people, correct?
Correct.
Now, when you look at mixtures, such as the ones in this case, you use terms like major and minor contributor, right?
Correct.
Is that language meant to convey that anything with respect to activity of anybody who might be assigned to that DNA weight? In other words, are you saying the person you label as a major contributor was engaged in any sort of activity? Is there any connection between the use of that language and activity?
None of the testing that I performed could speak to activity or what activity led to the deposition of the DNA.
So nothing in your report, if somebody reads that and says, oh, this one says this person is a major contributor, you're not commenting on anything about the person's activity, correct?
Correct.
And is it true also that there are also several other limitations concerning the language of your report that it's important for courts and people who are reading the report to understand?
I'm sorry, what was the question?
Are there other limitations in addition to the one we just reviewed that it's important to understand about the language you use in your report?
In terms, is there something specific that you're?
Yeah, there is. Could you go to Baker Exhibit 30, page 1, for the witness only? Are you familiar with this publication?
Yes,
This is a publication by the National Institute of Standards and Technology called Forensic DNA Interpretation and Human Factors.
correct.
This is put together as a guidance document for practitioners on what, to simplify it, essentially what to say and what not to say.
I don't know that I would call it a guidance document. NIST is not a regulatory body for DNA testing. It was a report that looked into forensic DNA reporting and specific human factors that could affect our testing. So they may have had recommendations, but as far as them being a regulatory body that's issuing guidelines, I wouldn't state that.
Okay, that's fine. Could you go to 136, please? This is Baker 30. Keep going. There we go, right there. Wait, 135, I'm sorry. And then scroll down to the next page. So they're making recommendations here as to how the report should be worded, correct?
Correct.
Let me ask you whether you agree with some of these limitations, or they call them caveats. They talk about how you describe the number of contributors, and they say the true number of contributors of DNA to an item can never be known. Do you agree with that?
Yes.
Okay. They also say, well, let me ask one question before I ask this one, which is, do you use something called a reporting cap in all three of your reports?
Yes, so for our likelihood ratio statistics, we cap the statistic at 1 trillion. The actual number could be a lot higher. It could be quintillion, octillion. We chose 1 trillion because it has meaning, I think, to people that can understand what 1 trillion is. An octillion and a quintillion gets a little high at that point, so we cap at 1 trillion.
And they talk here, do they not, about how you convey the idea of a reporting cap, and they say the LR reporting cap was chosen because of the limitation of biostatistical modeling and independence assumptions of STR loci. Do you agree that that's why the cap is chosen?
I believe we chose our cap for the reason I stated.
Do you disagree with that statement in terms of why the cap is chosen?
I'm not familiar with the paper that's referenced there, so I would have to familiarize myself before I said I
Okay.
agreed or disagreed.
Fair enough. And then they also suggest that you alert in your report that profile descriptors cannot be applied to activity level issues. Do you agree with that?
Yes, so this is what you were stating about calling a major contributor. It doesn't speak to the activity that led to the DNA deposition.
Right. DNA profiles may be described as major, minor. However, these descriptors should not be interpreted in the context of a decision regarding the nature or the mechanisms, actions, or timing that led to the deposition of the DNA. You agree with that?
Correct, yes.
All right. And then the other sort of limitation, convey that the DNA results cannot be interpreted as the analyst providing an opinion regarding who the source of the DNA is.
Yes, so this is, once again, we don't make source attribution statements. We will say there's support for inclusion, and then we back up that with a statistic.
So from a scientific standpoint, you couldn't read the paragraph that sets out the likelihood ratio in your report, whatever the number, and then blast a headline in the media, Mr. Robinson's DNA is found on this item. That's a source attribution, is it not?
Correct, yes.
And that would not be scientifically defensible, would it?
Correct.
Okay. Another limitation they talk about on likelihood ratios, on the next page, please, 137. Likelihood ratios cannot speak to the likelihood of a proposition, only to the probability of the results given a pair of propositions. Do you agree with that?
Yes.
Explain that, because that's a little above my pay grade in terms of understanding.
So a likelihood ratio statistic compares the probability of the DNA profile of the evidence given two competing hypotheses or two competing scenarios. Typically, the first is that the person of interest is included, and then the exclusionary hypothesis would be that the person of interest is excluded, so there's a random, unknown, unrelated individual contributing.
And when they're elaborating on that point, they say a likelihood ratio indicates if and to what extent the DNA analysis results support one proposition over another. It is not possible on this basis alone to determine which is the most probable proposition. Do you agree with that?
Yes.
Okay. And then the next limitation they suggest you convey is that convey that DNA statistics cannot imply uniqueness within a population. Do you agree that that's a legitimate limitation?
Yes.
And explain what that means. Does that go back to the issue of source? You can't assign a source to a DNA sample?
Correct.
Okay. It says you should delineate the meaning of a verbal qualifier, but you didn't use one in this case, right?
Correct.
Okay. Now, you mentioned that your testing cannot, and correct me if I'm wrong, I don't mischaracterize it. Your testing, none of the testing in any of the three reports can answer the question of how and when DNA got deposited. Is that true?
That is true. DNA can't speak to the activity that led to the deposition of the DNA.
And the report says, with regard to that issue, with the increased sensitivity of DNA techniques and sophisticated software, a DNA profile may be developed even when the contributor of that DNA never touched the item or area that was swapped. Alternatively, a person's DNA may be present when they were not involved in the crime. Do you agree with that?
Yes, once again, I cannot speak to the activity.
Can you explain how it's possible that a DNA profile may be developed even when the contributor of that DNA never touched the item or area that was swapped?
So it's possible if, say, the pen that you're sitting there using for the week, you say hand it off to the judge, and the judge then touches it for a period of time, and then I swab it. It doesn't speak to who handled it last. I could test that. I could get both of your profiles. I wouldn't know which person was the last person to handle that item.
All right. And similarly, if you had a lot of DNA on